Like my loyalty and my allegiance, first and foremost, is to nature.
The Empire Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Empire. And today we're here with Mr. Kevin Head, who is the man behind the community gardening and so much other things. And we're going to learn about him, his life, and all the great things that he does for the community. Kevin, welcome to The Empire.
Thank you.
We kind of jumped into it just like that, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So how's your day been, bro?
Pretty good. Just did a little bit of work at the Garden of Health, and that's about it. Just spent a few hours there getting the garden beds prepped. It's around the time when you start doing all the cool season planting, so it's an exciting part of the year for me.
Gotcha. What does that mean, like cool season planting?
Yeah, so cool season vegetables are ones that, they're like slightly frost tolerant and usually don't do well in the excessive heat. Like lettuce is a good example. Is once the soil gets too warm, the lettuce goes to seed. Like it cues it to go to seed. So which turns it bitter. Like once it starts to seed. So it's like this is a great time where you can like grow lettuce pretty easily, and like a lot of other leafy greens like spinach or like all the
Kale?
brassicas, yeah, kale,
Okay, so broccoli.
yeah,
Okay.
all that cabbage, collard greens, cauliflower, and yeah. To me personally, I really love growing cabbage. That's one that like I'm excited about. I love making my own sauerkraut, and
Oh, bro,
so
I gotta get a sample of that.
yeah, I'll happily share some with you.
Oh man, I love sauerkraut too. Do you use vinegar in yours?
No, I do it
Perfect.
lacto fermented. That's really,
It's the best way.
yeah.
It's just water and salt, right?
Yeah, that's or you actually don't even have to add the water because it's like there's enough water in the cabbage. So you just put salt on it and you kind of work it, like massage it, and the salt pulls the water out and basically have brine made from that.
Well, I tried making some sauerkraut, and it didn't work out as well as I liked it to.
No?
I always loved the purple cabbage. I love that
Yeah.
one. I love that one. But you know, we got into it so quick. But Kevin, can you please tell us all who may not know who you are and things that you do?
Yeah, so name is Kevin Head. I'm a gardener. I think always have a hard time, I guess, describing that or like summing up like what I do. But it's really what I think of it, just like I'm really passionate about gardening and mainly for growing food and trying to do it in a like a sustainable way that doesn't rely on pesticides or chemical fertilizer.
Is there gardening and do people garden that's not food? Oh, I guess flowers would be gardening that's not food,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a horticulturalist that oftentimes they just kind of will grow things for their looks and or just like having like a nice landscape. Like that's also like landscaping. That's sort of a type of gardening.
What is it called? Horticulturalist, you said?
Yeah, horticulturalist. Which I guess that spans a big thing, but like people that I've known that called themselves horticulturalists, basically that like they were gardeners who mainly grew like just for looks, just to have like nice plants around.
Aesthetics.
Yeah,
So you please continue. So you grow sustainable, right? You were saying sustainably.
yeah, and yeah, like the thing that really got me into gardening was discovering permaculture, which is like an online movement. It didn't start online, but like once the internet came around, it got really big, and it's like its main purpose is to grow or really like to do everything in with like human living, like whether it's like building homes or doing irrigation. It's but it's all about like doing it in a way that's sustainable and like trying to learn lessons from nature. Like is like a concept of a what's it called, food forest. It's basically like you're mimicking the natural rules of a forest. Like it's this guy Bill Mollison. He just spent a bunch of time studying the outdoors in the wilderness and just started to see like certain patterns and decided to try to apply that to something like an orchard essentially.
Can you give us some examples of like permaculture? Like, can you give us like some clean examples of what that look like?
Yeah. So yeah, really like probably the most iconic one would be a food forest because
What does
it's
that look like? What does that look like?
so I mean it's basically like you grow using layers like a forest naturally has like 7 layers. You know, like you have the top, the canopy trees, they're like your ones that are highest up and kind of form that layer at the top.
Okay.
Then you have understory trees, and then you have the like woody perennials that grow under that. And you have like soft like herbs, things with like soft bodied like
Like
annuals.
cilantro or something like that?
Yeah, like cilantro or
Okay.
you know basil, dill, or even like flowers. Like you can do like poppies or calendula or something. That would be considered that as well. And then like ground covers, vines, and like your root layer as well.
Would it be like potatoes?
Yeah, like
Okay.
potatoes. And like basically it's just like seeing a forest in those layers and like trying to design a system where you have all of those layers and you're choosing the species that you want to use. But essentially, it's like you have all of these interactions that kind of naturally go on between different plants.
So can you give us an example of how someone could do that, like in their backyard, create that forest
Yeah.
thing?
So like on a smaller scale,
Yeah.
like if you start from say like the thing that you're growing, like say like you're growing some kale, then like you want like you know that there's going to be certain pests that show up for that kale.
Okay.
And so like instead of using pesticide to get rid of the pest, you're going to like use different methods. The main one would be like attracting things that would eat the pest. Like
Like ladybugs or something like that?
yeah, like for aphids, you want to attract ladybugs. So one of the ways you can attract ladybugs is you can plant next to your vegetables things like dill, cilantro, and allow them to flower. And then the flowers will attract ladybugs because adult ladybugs actually drink nectar, and it's when they're in the larval stage that they mostly eat other bugs, which they do in the adult stage, but like a lot of stuff, it's like very carnivorous in its larval stage, and then it becomes like more of like a nectar drinking bug.
I like that carnivorous. It just likes to eat creatures when it's in its baby phase. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that, and so that's a big part. Like there's certain flowers that have these very shallow, like the spot where the nectar is. You don't need like special mouth parts to get down to it. And there's a lot of them. Like yeah, like dill and cilantro are two of my personal favorites. But then there's also yarrow and I've done carrots. Like if you have carrots, you just like let them go to flower.
Okay.
You can actually take if you buy carrots at the store, you get like the top part and just bury it in the ground. It won't grow a new carrot, but it'll grow a top, and that'll like go to flower pretty quickly.
So
Yeah,
comparing kale with dill and then
yeah.
anything else? I'm not,
So
yeah.
so generally with that, the idea is like you know like farms they tend to need pesticide because they plant in these like huge blocks of the same plant. And so because it's all just one thing, whatever the pest for that plant is, like it's gonna have an easy time finding it.
Oh, it's not gonna, it's no worry. It's like basically it's like a buffet for the
Yeah.
pest.
And that's again like learning lessons from nature. Like that's not something that nature does. Like there's not these monocrops that you know go on for miles and miles. So with like a permaculture approach would be to diversify, to have like multiple things kind of growing next to each other, but then also mixing in things that, once again, like the flowers, like not only do those flowers attract beneficial things, but with certain colors and certain aromas, it can actually help disguise some of your crops that you're growing for food. And so it's yeah, like if you're like kale is kind of in amongst a number of things, including like some I say like marigolds or calendula, alyssum, like those are good.
Those are flowers, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like those flowers, not only do they have colors, but they produce aromas that can sort of like confuse the pests.
Got you. You got
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I was looking for kale, but this ain't kale.
Yeah,
This ain't
exactly.
kale. This ain't kale.
And so like with kale, something I've learned that there's this white butterfly that is like a really problematic pest. And
Butterflies are pests? I thought they
yeah,
were pollinators.
I mean, I guess it varies a lot because depends on the type of butterfly. But there's specifically one called they call it a white cabbage butterfly, and
Okay.
we've all seen them. They're really beautiful white butterflies that you see in the garden, and yeah, they lay their eggs on any kind of brassica, and then once the caterpillar comes out, it eats holes in your brassicas, and it can get pretty bad. Like I've seen it like devastate like entire crops before if it's unchecked. But I've learned there's this bird called a black Phoebe. It's kind of like a bird, maybe about this big. It looks like it has a flat top, and it loves to catch insects. And if you just like put some type of perch in your garden, even if it's like a trellis, like that's how it ended up happening on accident. Was I just set up all these trellises
What's a
and
trellis for people who may not know?
oh yeah, so a trellis basically for climbing plants like tomatoes or
Uh,
like they need something to climb up on. So
Actually, like their vine can wrap around something, right? And go
yeah,
fit. Okay.
so a trellis is really anything that a plant can climb up on, that a climbing plant can use. So yeah, so at Acoma we set up a lot of trellises there. We have like these really tall ones for our tomatoes, and we're growing loofah right now on a really big trellis.
Got you. And then so that's when the Phoebe showed up and started.
Yeah,
Got you.
so it's like they're really good at catching flying insects. So if you give them something to perch on, they'll come into your garden and perch and look for flying insects to eat.
Okay. That's perfect. Perfect balance of life. Every time you kept on saying Phoebe, I started thinking about Friends.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was thinking of to try to remember what the name is. I was like, who's that character from Friends?
there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Friends, Phoebe. The Phoebe is coming. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys are enjoying the information and the stuff so far, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be so much more that we're going to get into. Okay. So yeah, yeah, the Black Phoebe. I guess we'll never forget that name ever, right?
Yeah.
Brassicas. That's stuck in my head forever to think about all the collard greens, cauliflower. I was going to say collard grams, so that's not such thing. But Kevin, right? We'd like to go a little bit deep here in the empire. Like the abyss.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little background story of how you grew up, where you grew up, all the way up to the man that you are today?
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up here in San Bernardino. I
Born and raised?
yeah, born and raised for the most part. I like when I was 13, I lived in Reno for a little while. That's like probably the one that feels most home away from home because I was about 11. My parents divorced. My dad moved to Reno, and I lived there out with him. That was like less than a year, and I just like miss San Bernardino. So eventually came back, but would still go out there like every summer for a couple months. And I was like my whole teenage uh, life was kind of following that. And then yeah, I lived in Missouri when I was about 20, but both of those were like less than a year that I lived outside of San Bernardino.
Why Missouri?
Again, my dad
Okay.
lived out there.
Is
And
that where
just-
he's from? The Missouri area, you think?
No, I'm not sure how that works. I think his family originally is from upstate New York,
Okay.
and like this little town they called like Fishkill or something.
Fish
Kind of weird.
kill?
Yeah,
I wonder what they do there.
right. And it's right next to Catskill. Same thing. It's just
Really
cats kill. Yeah, I'm
interesting.
sure there's some weird story behind that.
There has to be some type of connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Continue. Tell us about how you grew up,
so
where you grew up, stuff like that.
yeah, let me think here. Yeah, so yeah, just like I grew up out here. I went to San G High and Pacific, and
Were you a troublemaker? Were you a bad boy?
kind of yeah, like I never tried to get in trouble, but I was not very interested in like doing what I was told. So like
Hmm.
in high school, like I immediately ditched a lot, and also like right away, all the friends I made were like people who like we would just kind of like not go to school and instead go like um we would like what's it called panhandle for money
Okay.
and then
In
use
high
that money
school?
to get drunk. Yeah, that's what I was doing instead of going to school
Gotcha.
for the
Panhandling to
most
get
part.
drunk?
Yeah,
So
why
basically,
not?
you'd panhandle and then find someone to buy you beer?
Yeah, or just go to the liquor stores that we knew would sell to us. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Like, I guess I've always been someone who enjoys the like being on the outside, kind of seeing like the fringes of society, and so I don't know. I'm just like naturally drawn to that. I would rather like like hang out with people that would have been considered like not like good friends, I guess, by my parents or like the people who cared about me as a kid.
Yeah, they're like, like. So I'm pretty sure your mom was like, Kevin, why are you hanging out with these kids?
Yeah.
You got that a lot?
Or yeah, sort of. Like I think at some point it was like obvious that there's like nothing that she could do about it. I was like pretty set on
Yeah.
how I wanted to live my life.
And like, you're pretty tall, right? How tall are you?
Like 6'3", I think.
6'3"?
Yeah.
Did a lot of people try to test you? Because I feel like that happened. That
Yeah.
happened a lot.
Yeah, it was also just like naturally probably like throughout well, like all of school, like starting in like kindergarten, I was always kind of like a big goofy kid. Like I had really thick glasses and like almost looked like you remember Power Rangers?
Of
I
course.
was like the Blue Ranger, just kind of like a
Oh,
nerdy.
Billy? Was that his name, Billy?
I don't remember
Okay.
his name, but I just remember he was like the nerdy kid,
Hmm.
and it was like very much. I was just the embodiment of that, and so like way early, that was always like a part of school was like having to deal with bullies, and then like high school or right around middle school, like things just got more violent, and then it's I guess like it's like as kids get older, that kind of stuff gets ramped up, and yeah, like high school was a pretty regular thing to like get into fights after school, get jumped and things like that.
You got jumped?
Yeah, like more times than I can remember.
Really?
Yeah.
You ever think of why, or why do you think
I was
that?
thinking that I was just weird and kind of a loner, so I was like a easy
Target.
target, and probably like being large and intimidating. There's probably some like joy in like ganging up on me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably made you tough skin though, right? Probably.
yeah, sort of. Yeah, like I'm not really afraid of like physical pain and kind of enjoy it. And there's
You're a
like some
masochist.
a little bit. I mean, well, at least with the fight thing, like
Okay.
I kind of have to like try to avoid like I guess being in situations where I might get into a fight because it's like immediately like I'll want to. There's always a part of me that like a drug. It's like a rush and
Yeah.
yeah. Also yeah.
Like bring it on type of thing. Like okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I immediately think about seeing you in a mosh pit. That's what made me think.
I
Immediately.
used to. Yeah. I was really big into like punk music and yeah, I loved going to shows, moshing. Yeah.
I love your self awareness about how you're like, you know what, I gotta stay away from anything that can potentially become violent because it's just gonna like turn me on. I guess you could say more or less.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's good to yeah learn about the different aspects of yourself. and like I've always been really into that, like very introspective, and as I guess what kind of like eventually, like yeah, and as a young person, got into like all the people I hung out with were like punkers and what they would call like gutter punks, which looking back was just like a fun way to refer to like the homeless kids that were like part of our group. But like probably around like 16 though, like that was when like I started getting more and more into like nature and being in the wilderness, and that was like where I really felt at peace. Like I felt like it was like a beautiful part of the world. Like I felt like maybe before that, I don't know if there was really anything that I thought was beautiful. So that was like a big change and like something I knew that I would like become more obsessed with, I guess. And just as time went on, um, kind of moved further away from my social groups and just started like hanging out in like the foothills was like the main thing. Because like I lived right next to them, so I could just like walk, like.
Can you explain like what the foothills are for people who may not know what the foothills are?
So yeah, here in San Bernardino we have the mountains, like kind of all around us, like the Inland Empire, and like all around us there's mountains, and so the foothills just kind of refer to a series of hills that are like at the feet of the mountains. So, and that's yeah what I'm most familiar with, because like around here, yeah, if you want to go for a hike, you can like easily get to like all these different little access roads along the northern part of San Bernardino,
Ah,
and
hills. Actually makes sense now that I actually think the name of it's the bottom of the hill, the foot of the hill. They
yeah,
should just call it Foot Mountain, but I guess it doesn't have
Foot
that.
Mountain. Like these are technically hills.
Uh-huh. Oh, so
That's a
that's
hard distinction, though.
yeah,
At some
yeah.
point, it becomes a mountain.
I know. At one point, right, between hill, little mountain, mountain. What's the? So this is basically how your journey starts into becoming into nature more. Is I wanted to
Yeah,
ask you like being jumped more than you can count. Like, how did you? Do you think nature saved you from becoming like bitter towards people and
yeah,
resentful, and, like
definitely.
vengeful?
Yeah, I think about that all the time because, like, looking back, like I was not a positive person, and like I was letting that stuff turn me bitter. Like I was like mad at the world, and yeah, it was that, and it was also partly I met someone who was a spiritual medium, and like at that time, it was it was like important because it was like someone who again like helped me see like a more positive side. And like I don't know how valid it was. Could be sometimes like I feel like religion or spirituality it can give you an answer when you're like in a desperate place, and it's can like help you get through, but like I don't know how valid it really was. But
So if you want to shout the person and what they did or said
sure.
that what happened?
Yeah, so there's this woman named Julie Fleener, and she was actually a friend of, or not a friend, a mom of one of my friends.
One of the gutter punks.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. And yeah, like he had like a really, what to me seemed like a pretty sweet home life, like from the outside looking in, just because his like his house was really nice, and his parents seemed nice to me, but you know how that stuff works. It's all just from the outside. Seems nice, but I mean, either way though, like that was like at some point we did that. Like she let my mom know that was something that she did, and something she told me that like some message came to me from some spirit, and like I don't know, maybe it was just like thinking back at it, like it just kind of like changed the way I looked at the universe, and this idea of like positive spirits out there like caring about me was important at the time. Like it did give me like hope and feel more positive about life.
Do you remember what she said? The spirit said and stuff like that. Do you remember?
Yeah. or that's a weird. I have to get into a long story to like explain that, and it's probably best left somewhere else.
Okay, well, if you want to share with us, I think it would be kind of cool for us to know a little bit. I'm curious. I'm pretty sure maybe the audience might be curious, but it's up to you if you want to share or not. It's
Yeah.
your world.
Well, it gets weird. I guess it has learned something about me. Something honestly I don't talk a lot of because it's I guess a part of my past I'm ashamed of is uh at that time like the reason why like I knew the kid like he was my friend but I was also like recruiting him to a white supremacist organization. So like at that point I was like a skinhead and yeah, believed in white supremacy. And so that yeah, like I was saying, like I was just like angry at the world. So I was just like that was me. That was what I believed in. And like that kid, like I just kinda like saw him as like someone that I could turn into like another one of me. And so yeah, that's how like it all got started was like she discovered some like literature that I had shared with him and then she like got in contact with my mom and that like started this whole thing and
Your mom had no idea about this, about your belief
um
system.
I don't know. I was probably
Had an idea.
I can't even remember at that point,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
how aware she was.
Continue.
But yeah, so the spiritual message that came through was supposedly from Martin Luther King Jr. And
Okay.
that's I don't remember what he said, but like it was like that message to me like it felt genuine and like maybe also like made me more interested in Martin Luther King Jr. And so I read one of his books or it's not his book. It's like the closest thing to an autobiography that's out there. Like I got it, I read it and just like yeah, like changed the way that I saw things. And yeah, so that was like I was around like I was young, like maybe like 14 or 15 and it's like it was like a big change like where I started to like live my life very differently. It was like I had kind of like receded from a lot of my social groups and started like spending more time in nature and then eventually I started trying out some like psychedelics like mushrooms and
Okay.
that just played more of that role of just kind of going more and more into being like a nature lover and
Shooming will definitely take you on a trip for sure.
yeah.
Uh, a couple of times that I've shroomed, I'm always like, I'm never gonna do this again. Every time I've shroomed, I've said I'm never gonna do it again.
Oh
Every
really?
time, every time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And so basically, the shrooming, and I'm pretty sure you're probably shrooming in nature, probably as well.
Yeah. The main thing was like, yeah, it was like going out, it was specifically the spot that's like in the foothills that it was like close to my house. So like I would just, at a certain point, I was like spending most of my time just out there. And yeah, I don't know, like I just, at some point, yeah, with the help of mushrooms, like became more aware of just kind of like the consciousness of nature, I guess. Like, it was like, it's like alive in some way. Once you feel like once I started interacting with it, there was like some force that like wanted me to get to know it even more. Like it's almost like it wants to be known, it wants to be understood. And yeah, I just at that time, yeah, I became obsessed with it. I didn't really even know that there was like good in me. Like I thought that I was like I don't know, I just thought of life as different. I didn't think of it as beautiful. And so like at that time early on it was almost like a way for me to just like get away from like all the darkness in myself. So it was kind of like,
Like a purging.
yeah, but also like a kind of running away from it. Which I realized later on that like everything that I had like left behind, like I was kind of like trying to pretend that it wasn't part of me anymore. But
Like ignoring it, trying to everything,
yeah,
denying it.
Yeah.
opposed to facing it.
And that gets back to the like being self-aware thing. Like I think knowing yourself is really important, and like knowing all the sides of it. Like knowing like it eventually got really into like psychology and philosophy, and read Carl Jung. Like he talks a lot about the shadow.
Okay,
Sort of
shadow
like,
self.
yeah. It's basically a way to like sum up all the aspects of yourself that you're not comfortable with. Like you have a hard time admitting to, because they're, yeah, like your dark side. It's like not aligned with cultural values and things like that. So you tend to ignore it. You tend to like push it away, and that's it's a problem, because it is like if you leave that unattended, then it tries to find ways out.
Yeah,
And
it'll just like get bigger and bigger inside as opposed to
yeah,
addressing it. Kind of like the yin and yang, right? Like no one's exactly pure, no one's exactly evil, right?
right, yeah, yeah, and like in the yin and yang, it's like each you have like the black and the white, but then like within the white, there's that little dot of black, and vice versa. That represents that, yeah, like yin and yang is kind of within all things.
Yeah, I love that. I love this where we're going because it's like nature saved your life. Not only that spiritual
Yeah.
message, but nature itself, right? And so, we're in our teenage years, right, going into this following nature. So, did you end up ever going to college, and like, how did you decide to make this a profession? What you're doing now? How that
Yeah.
transition happened and stuff like that.
So yeah, in my early 20s, I did some community college, but didn't really know yet that like gardening would become like an obsession. And I think it was just like a little bit after college that I realized that like if I were to go back, I would want to study more like things like natural science. When I was in college, I studied music and like theater, things like that, because when I was really young, that was like the stuff I was super fascinated by. Like,
You're a theater nerd.
yeah, or I guess like I always wanted to be a writer. Like there at some point I would make like these little skits. Like my grandma, she had like kept a lot of my toys, and like my cousins and all that. Like she just like kept our toys. So around like teenage years, I just got the idea of like making little like shorts with them, and so I'd like build sets, and just, yeah, like I really loved doing that stuff, and it was very early on, just like really admired like good movies. Like I was like, you know who Kevin Smith is?
Of course, Jane, Silent Bob.
Yeah. So I was like I looked up to him in some level. Like thought he was really funny, and thought like it'd be cool to do something like that. Be kind of like a outside the box movie maker.
um, the Kevin Smith of the Inland Empire type of thing.
Yeah, that would be dope.
Yeah, it made me think of the movie Chasing Amy. Many people don't know
Yeah.
about that movie, but I'm pretty sure you do as a fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's an intense one. But yeah,
So you were in
and
college and you were thinking about theater, or you were into theater stuff and writing.
yeah, so that like the stuff that I wanted to go in the direction of was like theater and music.
Do you still have a passion for those things?
Yeah,
Okay.
still do. I just the thing is that like I took those classes because like I thought I should study this stuff because I'm so passionate about it. But I realized that there's kind of a difference. Like there's one like being passionate about like art or something is one thing, but wanting to get into like the academic side of it is like very different. And so
Very different.
yeah. So after a certain while I just realized like I wasn't that interested in like learning those aspects of it. It was something that I much more just like wanted to do in some way.
You know what I've learned about art and education? This is just my opinion. Is like art is creative freedom.
Mm.
Education is structure.
Yeah.
So you're like, it's like art education is kind of like an oxymoron technically because it's kind of, they're trying to structure creativity
Yeah.
or put it into a box.
It's true, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I like to think of it like you can learn how to like play a guitar just like Eddie Van Halen, but you can't teach somebody to be Eddie Van Halen. Like it's
Yeah, it's in you.
yeah. And I feel like yeah, that was maybe the difference that I didn't realize. Like I love it being kind of like a spontaneous, like mysterious relationship to creativity.
Yeah.
I said it before. I don't like getting too much into like understanding the academic side of it.
I think the good part about the academic part of it is like it can give you like the history, it can give you the tools, but it can't give you the soul. I guess that's what
Yeah.
we're going to with Eddie Van Halen, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
like I remember because I went to school for music, and so people were like, I'm gonna get all this like the most expensive equipment and do all this stuff and make the greatest beats, right?
Mhm.
But it's like, okay, it's the equipment doesn't necessarily make you a great creator of music.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
people who have done great things with less. It's really about
Definitely.
your creativity inside, right? And your expression.
Yeah. Especially this day and age, with there's like a lot of tools available that like a few decades ago weren't weren't around, and so yeah, say like if you have like decent talent, like you don't really need much to create something that sounds good enough to like put out there.
Or you can just give it to AI and take credit for it.
Yeah, that's a scary one. I mean, for like creativity, just like wondering like how good will AI get? Like, will it be like already like graphic artists and stuff? Like, it must suck to have like trained your whole life to be a graphic artist, and now you can just like put some cues into an AI program, and it'll come up with something in seconds.
I think what's going to happen, going back to the AI thing, and there's going to, and I think it's already existing in certain, like when you're like writing research papers, you have to, like you have to cite where your source is. Now you have to cite whether you got it from AI. So I
Yeah,
think what's going to happen now, or it should definitely get into law because a lot of artists are in jeopardy, is citing whether, okay, is this art created naturally from the thought and perspective of a human being, or did it come directly from AI? I think that's going to be
yeah,
the future, right? And I think it needs to be.
yeah, definitely. And I think probably like AI will continue to get good, but I think to a certain degree, will naturally reject it because I say like yeah, AI is being used to write movies to some degree now. You'd like or maybe like 5 years away from having like a movie that's purely AI generated, and it might be like so good that it's like hard to really tell. But I think people won't like the idea of that it's like wasn't something that kind of like forged out of like human creativity. That's part of what makes it so enjoyable. That's one of the reasons why I love older movies, like before CGI was around, because
Using
like
natural effects.
yeah, and it took a lot of work and a lot of like creativity to make those things happen. So I mean, I don't know.
I think what's gonna, I agree with you. I think what's gonna happen, I think it's gonna get to a point where, this is my opinion. I'm on two sides of it. I think there's people are naturally lazy. They don't care as long as they're entertained. They'll just feed
Yeah,
me. But I also think there's going to be an aspect, kind of like how people are like, I want my food organic. So I
right.
think it's going to be
Yeah,
a thing where people are like, you know what, I want something that has been truly come out of the originality of a human being. And
yeah,
that's going to be like a movement type of thing that's going
yeah. Yeah, I think like from the time that the internet became sort of like commonplace throughout the world, I think a lot of trends of people like wanting to go back to like simpler things, like almost like nostalgia trends, like the hipsters, like that. A lot of that was like doing stuff old school ways, like people that want to get back into vinyl or
Yeah.
making their own beer or whatever.
That whole part. Yeah. Yeah. Craft beer for
Yeah.
sure.
Now there's they call themselves cottage core. They're almost like the more extreme like
Version.
version of that.
What is
Yeah.
cottage core?
It's interesting. It is like there's varying degrees of commitment to it, but it's basically people that want to live like it's like a 19th century like lifestyle.
They do the whole route.
Yeah, well, some
Okay.
people it is just an aesthetic. Like they want their houses to look a certain way, and they dress like they're in Mumford and Sons. But some people really like they want to live that way, even like having like traditional, like uber traditional marriage and things like that. So it's interesting to see it almost like that pendulum like swing in the other direction.
Makes sense. You know, this is just my opinion. What kind of bothers me is that people kind of do things just for the look of it. When you say like people just do it for the image, it's like, come on,
Yeah.
like go all the way or not, But I want to
Yeah.
continue, right? So how did, you know, dear God, someone is honking their horn outside. Hopefully you guys can't hear that, but I want to continue with like, okay, so how did we, so we wanted to be a director, writer, filmmaker, artist,
Yeah.
director, musician. So how did we become an actual farmer and into this world of farming? How did this actually happen, this transition?
Yeah, so that was like I was talking about kind of like retreating from social circles and just kind of spending more time in the wilderness. And eventually like I made some friends that like share that same value system, that they were like interested in doing more like natural living, and they were like really into like survival uh stuff, like going out and like learning how to set up traps, learning how to make shelters. And I was also, so like I got into that and actually like had a few people to do it with. I started learning more about like medicinal plants, like how to use the plants in the foothills, and like
What are some of the medicinal plants out there?
so I guess like
Is rosemary considered medicinal?
yeah, that's medicinal. It's not native though, but like you can grow it in a garden, and I think that one is often used as a like an antibacterial. Like there's a good amount of plants that are like natural antibacterial, and that one I think some people have heard it. I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly works for hair loss.
So yeah, what are some of
Grows.
the medicinal plants that you saw?
So I'd say like one of my favorites that grows in the foothills is called California sagebrush. It's a very aromatic plant that like it's like a very good sleep aid. Like it's a good painkiller, but you can also like if you make a tea with it and drink it, it like helps you sleep pretty good.
Okay. For people that might have insomnia or something like that.
Yeah. Which for me, yeah, like the time I discovered it, that was like a problem I was having. So it was nice to like find such an effective remedy to a problem I was having.
Man, it's crazy
Yeah.
how God works that in the universe.
Yeah.
So continue. So you met your tribe, right? That taught you how to catch and
Or
live
yeah.
sustainable living. So what happened after this? What happened after that?
So this is where I guess the mushrooms actually comes in again.
Okay, they show
'Cause
up again with the. They just keep on
yeah.
showing up. They're like, "Hey, Kevin, remember us?"
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so at that point I was starting to think that like I wanted to plan my life to where I could just like live in the woods and be like a wild man. And so like I was on this trip with it was just me and this one other dude. We were like going into this place, like kind of like venturing into it. And like it was definitely like there weren't any hiking trails. It was just like a place where people usually wouldn't go. And our plan was to just go in, explore as much as we can, eventually set up camp and like take some mushrooms. And so we did that, and while I was sitting there like on the mushrooms, uh like I started noticing like the area that we were walking through, that there were these like little black things. I looked closer and realized that they were eggs, and we're just kind of like walking through this like nesting area of something. And it just kind of like led to a series of thoughts, and kind of realized like me being out there came at a price. Like I was taking from nature in order to be there. And just kind of like I guess I had the thought like, do I really need to? Like am I taking something that I don't need? And it was like, yeah, just like this revelation, which at that time like seemed very far-fetched, that like, I was like going out there to find nature, but really what I need to do was like bring it back to like the city, like find some sort of way to do that. And like I wasn't aware of like urban agriculture or anything like that at that time. And so I remember, yeah, like sharing this like revelation with my buddy, and like him thinking I was crazy, and also like being disappointed that I was like I'm not gonna stay here, like I'm gonna leave. And so canceled our camping trip. But I don't know, it was like maybe like a year after that I discovered permaculture through the internet, and just like fell in love with that because it was like yeah, and also like realize like a lot of what I worry about with like humanity and our seeming inability to find balance with our environment, like I realized it, like there were actual solutions out there, like there were ways to do that, and just like it needed, there needed to be like the will and the incentive for people to do that. But like it wasn't hopeless, like it was an actual choice that we could make to be more in alignment with our natural, with the natural system and our environment. And yeah,
Basically, you kind of basically found it, and um, permaculture kind of solved that problem, or that concept of like, how can I be sustainable, right? Sustainable living, right?
yeah,
Without hurting the nature.
yeah,
So basically, your first level of farming came through permaculture type of farming.
yeah. I
Would you say?
think um, I might have done like a little bit of gardening. I think my actual earliest experience with growing stuff, it just like my mom decided to start like a little garden at the house we were living at.
Okay.
And like that was the first time ever, like she got some chilies, and like I just kind of like helped with it. And I remember like we had a habanero plant, and I was like so excited about having grown these habaneros that I insisted on eating all of them. Like I didn't want anything to go to waste.
Okay. Did you share?
Oh yeah, I shared.
Okay.
There's so much. I mean, like I basically, in order to like not letting it go to waste, I made like this thing of habanero salsa, and would just like intentionally eat like a certain amount every day to make sure it wouldn't go to waste.
Gotcha. Probably cleaned you guys out.
Yeah. And that was actually after a while, that's when I guess became aware that like spice can become like a little addictive, and
Oh.
like
Going
that
back to that
strong.
pain, loving that pain again.
Yeah. So that strong hit, and it is like, yeah, like extreme spice loving. That can be like a form of masochism that's like not as, because it's the same reason why people get addicted to self harm. It's the endorphins that come from it. So
Gotcha. It's addicting going in, but going out, definitely the addiction is not as fun.
yeah,
The day at that point.
that's true.
Yeah.
So I still to this day like I grow chilies, and I'll eat really hot ones, but I don't swallow them.
You just chew on them?
Yeah,
Chew
I'll
and
just like
spit?
eat a straight one. Yeah, get it
Gotcha.
all around my mouth and spit it out, and then
Gotcha. It's kind of like the girls you deal with, right?
what's that?
They just put it in and spit.
Exactly. Yeah. You only swallow if you're willing to commit.
That part, right? Better commit, man. Hey, if you want a ring, you got to commit. You want a stable relationship, you got to commit. Um, and so I'm assuming you mentioned a lot about this. So I'm assuming you have the mindset of off-grid living.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You're for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
big time. Yeah. In general, like the way I see it is that like my loyalty and my allegiance first and foremost is to nature.
I like that.
And I can see like,
What does that mean?
so I feel like there's the natural system that like human beings have always been a part of, but I guess maybe with the rise of agriculture, funny enough, like that's where you start to get like empires, and like people become so powerful that it's almost like you have this competing force. Because before that, humans were always just like we lived in the natural system. we were like look at like religions and stuff. They were always based on like the natural world around them. Like they worshipped gods that were kind of based on things like like the apex predators that they dealt with, or like the
Like a sacred
forces of
tree or something
nature.
like that.
Yeah, it's like certain medicinal plants and things like that that they deified and created like a religion around. And then like humans moved into empires or like really big cities and things like that. And we started to create like new religions based around people. Like now our gods are basically just men, and then that we deify.
Pharaohs.
Yeah. And or even like I like religion. I'm very like I feel like it goes into like the spiritual philosophy thing. Like I'm not really into them as institutions, but I love the philosophy of a number of religions. But say like someone like Jesus Christ or Buddha, like these are men that we deify. So like that's like slightly different. Anyway, it was like a side tangent, but the way I see like modern life, that we do have like a lot of people that live in the city, like they're not aware of the natural world and where their loyalties lie, and like what they serve is something that people created. And yeah, and I feel like they can sometimes be antithetical, like our the world that we created, the artificial one, like it can like is one of the things that kind of causes us to be out of balance. And I feel like that needs to come second. Like first and foremost should be our need to be in balance with our environment. And we get that through serving nature. And so like to me, I see myself as somebody who serves nature first.
Can you give us an example of how one or yourself would serve nature first?
Yeah, so for me, like that's the idea of just like turning like developing green spaces. And that really is just like uh I'm a big believer in urban agriculture. Like I think that we should try to like have as much growing in our urban environment as possible, whether it be for like food and medicine, or even just to like enhance the environment and make the air cleaner and things like that.
Aesthetics or something.
Yeah, even that, like I forget what it's called, but there's like a whole therapy based around like how people feel in natural environments. Yeah.
Because I know you said that you were recruiting kids about into like the white supremacy thing, right? Is Was that a big thing in the San Bernardino Inland Empire, and do you think it still is a big thing out here?
Um, yeah, I wonder about that. So when I was in high school, it was like the kids that I was involved with, almost all of them were in Redlands. And so I think it's not very common in San Bernardino, but surrounding areas like Redlands, Ukaipa, Crestline, there are like white supremacist organizations out there that are like active and still doing their thing.
To date, you think?
Oh yeah, I think
Okay.
definitely so. Yeah, yeah, they haven't gone anywhere. I think like when you get into like the really serious ones, they're actually like working with Mexican cartels. Like they play important roles in like the moving of drugs and different illegal things from Mexico. And yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? Because you would think if you're a white supremacist, why would you want to work with someone who's Mexican? Because they're
Yeah.
right. What's your thoughts on that?
That
Explain.
was funny. So like back then I was like 13 and like real like fanatic. Like I was like really a believer in their doctrines or whatever. But yeah, so I just realized at some point that I mean it's almost like churchgoers that like it's just part of their culture. It's what unites the people that they know. And And yeah, it's like a lot of it is just like it's a business. It's like any other gang in California, and they just a lot of it does like also stem out of prison or just for whatever reason. Like once you get into prison, you're racially segregated. Like people are still like fully segregated in prison, and so that's like a lot of the people that I knew. That's where they got started. Like they went to jail and they were white, and so they ended up forming alliances with the skinheads there because that's just what you do, I guess.
Yeah, because you align with your race, right?
Yeah,
And so the only reason why they're working with the Mexican cartels is we're gonna make money. Who cares
yeah,
what their race looks like? We're gonna make some money with them.
yeah. Like they're the ones that had the drugs and yeah, the things that they wanted.
Gotcha. That's probably where like all the coke and the meth comes in. Probably the what's happening big right now in California.
I don't know, fentanyl
That's the
seems
one.
a
That's
bit
the one. That's
popular
the
one.
big F.
Yeah,
Everyone's with. Wow.
yeah.
Gotcha. I wonder is there a difference between white supremacist and Nazi? It's like an umbrella, I guess. You could probably look at it.
Yes, so because there are some white supremacists who don't consider themselves Nazis,
Exactly.
and then there's also like in Europe, you got some like people who consider themselves national socialists, but like not necessarily even white supremacists. Like, but they believe in that form of government. Of, I think in Greece they have a like a national socialist party that's not necessarily like they don't necessarily have racial identity. It's more of like the economics of the system, and but then also yeah, like you do have like classic they call the Azov Battalion in Ukraine. Like they're apparently like very much ideologically like almost like the just the new version of the Nazis of Germany.
Neo Nazis.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Because skinheads wouldn't even be considered Nazis, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's like another different category, right?
Yeah. So usually with my experience with like American skinheads, it's like they oftentimes do like admire Hitler or like have like revisionist ideas about World War II, but it's not really in their identity. It's much more of like an American grown version of white supremacy.
What do you mean? Can you give us an idea, like what revisionist concept? Can you give us like an idea what you mean?
Yeah, so like in America, you go to school and you learn that like Hitler was an evil man who was like striving after power and did all these horrible things. But yeah, there's a revisionist look at it that says that like all that's a lie, and actually he was like somebody who was like looking after his country and like trying to build a new like homeland or whatever.
Okay. He's actually a good guy.
Yeah, that's the revisionist part is yeah, kind
I
of
love
painting him as the hero as opposed to the villain. Yeah.
So it's so crazy because it's what is it? He who wins the battle writes the story.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you learn more about history. A lot of it is gray, like World War II, like there were a lot of the leaders of that time, like had insane ideas and like, killed a lot of people.
I've even heard things where like a lot of the Jewish people were part of like financing like the Nazi side of the war. I've heard some crazy things like that before.
Oh, really? Yeah, I know there was some like I know there were like Americans that kind of like helped. There's a Prescott Bush, who's from the Bush family that he was like helping launder money to like help fund Nazi Germany.
Yeah. Wow. So crazy, right? History's so crazy. We're having a good time here, Hope you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
Hope, ladies and gentlemen, you guys are also enjoying yourself. And, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. You know, Kevin, we hear this term a lot called food deserts.
Mhm.
What are they and are they real, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, where we are right now, this is be like a good example of a food desert, but I guess it more has to do with like how accessible like fresh produce is. That's really the main indicator, and like it's kind of like right now, if you were to start walking, like you would come across like 5, 6 different like fast food places before you actually got to like a grocery store or some place that sells good produce. And like some people define it also as like having access to organic produce. And like I don't know, like the way I see it, like like you live in a bad part of San Bernardino, like you still have choices. Like you can make the healthy choice, but the healthy choice is kind of put out of your way. Like there's a lot of unhealthy choices that are a lot more convenient. And like something I learned, it was a while back. I was working at Baker's fast food and realized that there were like homeless people that would come in every day, and like I'd never really thought about it, but like if you're really broke, that's kind of like the most economical way to fill yourself up is like buy some like really cheap high calorie food. And
It really makes me
yeah,
think of Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box used to have tacos 2 for $1. That's really
yeah,
what it makes me think of.
those weird tacos. Yeah, they got strange. I think it's like soy, the meat that they have in
Yeah,
there.
it
It
was. Yeah,
always.
it's supposed to be soy. They said it was soy. They said it was soy.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like really the issue because there's like there's this tie between like class and like health. Like lower class, you have higher rates of like diet related
Yeah.
illnesses like heart disease and diabetes. And I feel like yeah, partly it is the like the access to it, but it's also for a lot of people that like the knowledge of it is missing. Like it's like been part of my struggle in this long time is that it wasn't really something I was taught like how to like eat healthy. And like it's like a whole other aspect to like growing the vegetables is like how to even produce or how to make food out of them, how to process them into something you can
Uh-huh.
eat and serve.
It's like 2 different levels, basically. There's
Yeah,
levels to this shit.
yeah, and it really is a. I guess it's something that's lost. It's gotten lost. That's like for me. That's a big part of why I think it's valuable that as people became urbanized, lost all this knowledge of how to be connected to our environment, and that like is a big part of like what makes people healthy. Because even if you do go to the grocery store and like purchase mostly vegetables, those vegetables are very nutritionally deficient because of how they're grown. And also, you have like pesticides or, things like glyphosate, which is like an herbicide that is very commonly used in farming. And it's considered there's like no healthy level of it. It's a carcinogen that
Wow.
probably leads to a lot of cancer. And so, yeah, like
Uh,
having like going back to just like that traditional or like way of living where you're growing the food or like somehow participating in the growing of the food or it's happening on a local level and it's like being grown properly because that's I guess a lot of it the way the industry works is it's being grown just for profit and like by quantity,
yeah.
so
Give me more.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like all the vegetables in the grocery store are really big, but they just kind of like fill it with chemical fertilizer to make them grow big.
Mm,
But they're usually not really doing much to replenish the soil. So like where the plant actually gets its nutrients, yeah,
yeah.
is not really there.
And what's happening crazy now is that they're charging more and they're giving you less as far as
Yeah,
produce wise.
yeah.
You know?
That's a big like people who really love permaculture. That's a really big part of it is like our global food system is kind of slowly collapsing. Like year after year, like it continues to happen where more and more crops are failing. There is like a limited amount of topsoil. Like in the Midwest, that's where like a lot of our our grains are grown, and it's relying on this this topsoil that was developed, just like organic matter breaking down, just the natural cycle. And, that went on for thousands of years before like Europeans came and started like cattle grazing or, tilling the ground
Mm-hmm.
or like clearing it and things like that. And it is almost like a really fat bank account that we've just been pulling out of, and like that's going to run out eventually. And it's predicted, I think there's like 40 or 50 like years left before like that topsoil is like dangerously depleted.
And that's like a generation basically gone.
Yeah.
So how can you replenish the topsoil?
So that's, yeah, like with a sustainable farming, like we do composting. That's a
That's what I was gonna say.
big
Compost.
part of it. So with composting, just kind of you're replicating what happens in a forest, like
Yeah.
any natural system. You have your organic matter, like if plants are growing, animals are dying or defecating, and that all ends up on the topsoil, and then all these microbes kind of break it down.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because you get this cycle of like there's life, stuff generates, then eventually it dies, and when it dies it gets eaten by other things, and starts this cycle kind of all over again.
Yeah.
Eventually, say like like a blade of grass will kind of make its way back to becoming a blade of grass again.
It's the circle of life.
Yeah.
Do do.
All learned about it in Lion King.
There we go. There we go. And a do. I thought you were gonna sing with me for a second there. And a do 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 do. So Kevin, you work with a lot of community gardens around here, right?
Yeah.
Right in the area. How's that experience like for you? And what have you learned working in these community gardens in the
Yeah, I mean it's been a great experience. I mean it's, I guess, something that feels so serendipitous in my life that I managed to be where I am now. It's pretty incredible. Is yeah, I don't know, it was like kind of like a perfect match, and I guess sort of similar to how I started it. Like I just knew what direction I wanted to go into, but like had no idea how I would end up there. And yeah, like so for me, like probably the first 10 years of that journey of just like being really dedicated to learning how to grow food. And it was all just kind of like a personal journey. And at some point, discovering the community gardens and stuff just kind of like brought the community aspect to it, which I wasn't even aware of that I was missing. It was like one of those aha moments, I guess. Realize like, yeah, that's an important part and a challenging part. I'm still learning like how to work within community and like organize people, get them to, I guess, be interested.
IE?
Uh, yeah, I mean that's the way I see it. I'm like very very grateful to be working with the people that I work with, and like similar, like in gardening, see a lot of patterns, and like kind of see like starting a garden. It's almost like when you plant a tree, like with one tree, like as it grows, you know, maybe like first year you might not get anything from it. You might just be nurturing that tree and letting it grow. And second year you'll get a little bit, and then eventually it's sort of like year after year you go more in the direction of the tree needing less care, but it's also like yielding back more. And like gardens in general, like that, like it is like a long term uh, project, and just slowly gets better every year. And
It's so interesting that you mentioned this because I was thanking God because I was like, because I'm trying to do, I'm working on my home patio garden. I'm getting there. It's not getting as fruitful as I'd like it to, but it's I'm trying. But I was thanking God because I was like, going back to like patterns you were saying, I was like, I feel like I learned so much just from growing. Because I think a lot of it's like, you plant a seed, you nurture that seed, you watch it grow, and it's kind of like in life, like you plant the things that you want in your life, or plant things in people, and it takes time for it to nurture and to grow and to show itself, right? Like nothing
Yeah.
happens overnight. And it's like
Right.
I learn a lot from planting and growing. Like, hey, this thing is not going to give me food the next day. It's going to take time for me to get some food out of
Yeah.
this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Somewhere, I forget when I read it, but there's this really popular book called One Straw Revolution that, like in the permaculture community, is like one of the most important books. And
Can you say it again? What it is?
the One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka, the Japanese
Japanese.
guy. Yeah. And it's a great story because it is like this guy's personal journey and like trying to get back to nature. And it's happening right like after World War II when a lot of what we know today is like petrol farming, like the way agriculture works really changed drastically after World War II because of the introduction of like motorized farm equipment and also chemical fertilizers.
Like the
Like,
tractor?
yeah, so like tractors and different things like that became a lot more commonplace. And whereas, like, pretty much like before that, people were still like relying on horses and things like that, like pole plows and whatnot. And so it was like all this modernization happening around him, and he was like trying to find ways to get back to nature and do like more simple ways. But it's all from a like a Taoist perspective as well. Like I don't know if he considered himself a Taoist, but he talks a lot about Taoist philosophy in his book. And
Can you enlighten us with an example of how he had it from a Taoist perspective?
yeah, so I guess like Taoists really believe in kind of like going with the flow of things.
Okay.
Like what they call like in the actual writings is like doing nothing. Like to like if you do nothing, then nothing's left undone. And
Got you. It's a stoner perspective. It's like if you do nothing, nothing gets done. You don't have to worry about it.
yeah. I don't think it was meant to literally be taken that way. It's
Yeah.
kind of more of the idea of like
It's like poetic ways.
yeah. Or like if you're playing music or if you're dancing, like you're just in the moment. You're not thinking about it. Or like you don't play a song with the goal of getting to the end of the song. It's all about like being in that moment. And but anyway, so like in there's a great line from that book where basically he's talking about how like if you learn the nature of a garden, like that does help you kind of see the nature of the universe. Yes, what Taoists call the Great Way. And that's I think like for me, a garden has always been a teacher. Like it is a spiritual practice. It like from the perspective that the world has a creator, then when you're gardening, you're engaging with the creation and you're getting to know it better. And I think that helps kind of give you a more intimate sense of like who the creator is,
Amen to
what God
that.
is like. Yeah.
Yeah, amen to that. I completely agree with you that nature is spiritual and being a part of it is like godly. And that's why I believe it saved your life, because I think a lot of and going back to like there has been studies about like mental illness and depression and all these things being solved by just going into nature.
Yeah.
There's studies going on right now about it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I feel like you want to say something.
And like I think of it from a, and this was again like a. I'm a big believer in psychedelics, but I think it's very important to use them the right way. Like when I was young, it was like stumbling upon those at the same time of like learning more about nature and choosing to be out there more. Like it worked out well for me. Like it did
Hmm.
help me attain like a much more positive spiritual outlook on life. And there was this one time where I guess I had this revelation that it is almost like there's this signal. It's almost like a part of what we are is like an antenna in a way.
Yes.
And we pick up this signal that comes from nature. And like you spend too much time in the city, it is like it kind of distorts that signal. Yeah. And so that's like, yeah, going on a hike for me, it like helps me reconnect to that signal. And yeah, kind of makes it strong again.
I
So
like that.
yeah.
It's like powering up.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of, I guess some people said that the pyramid in the Great Pyramid of Giza is
Hmm.
like a big source of like energy. It's like an antenna. So it kind of reminds me
Yeah.
of that, something along those lines. You people can correct me if you know better, but we were talking a little bit earlier about you're in the IE in San Bernardino, like your least favorite time is summer because it's hot. But
Mhm.
the great part is that it gives some of the greatest vegetables like melons and tomatoes.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite part of growing in general?
So it really is like, I guess this is a different answer for a lot of people, which I was surprised by because it seems like the most logical answer that is like at the end when you get to harvest. And
Hmm.
for me, like it is like I was talking about how I like making sauerkraut and
Yeah.
some other stuff that I really love making, like hot sauce and jams. Like that's the part I like the most is actually like when you turn it into something really good.
Uh,
And yeah, so it's like from start to finish, where it's actually something you grew yourself, like you nurtured it. And there is like yeah, you get kind of like a personal attachment to it. As like with plants, like you do kind of form a relationship with them. And so it's like different when you harvest from something that you like nurtured and developed this relationship with as opposed to just something that you purchased. And so like I really love that process. Like I was actually meaning to bring you some. I have to get some too. I just made some hot sauce. It was like really, really good.
what's in it?
So
Shame on you for forgetting. Shame on you.
I know I feel bad,
Shame.
but so it's like fermented chilies, garlic, and cilantro. Like I take chilies, garlic, and cilantro, and I ferment it in like a salt brine, and then I just kind of blend it up and filter it, and it's very similar to like a Frank's Red Hot kind of sauce. Yeah, it is amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a lot of people who grow would probably admit or agree with you with saying like it's such a joy of growing your own food and then eating it, producing it, and it's just a different like I guess you could say spiritual connection and feel for it. It's like and obviously the flavor is completely different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, so I want to help educate people because I'm pretty sure people are probably like, I want to grow something, but I'm scared. So, what would you say some of the easiest things for people to grow, even if they don't even have like a front yard? What would you say some of the easiest things for some people to grow?
I'd say vegetable wise, it's definitely radishes
Mhm.
are just like crazy easy to grow. Beans like are a really easy one.
Like pinto beans, garbanzo beans, really?
Yeah, I mean if like so garbanzo beans, that's a pretty easy. It's called a bush bean, so it just produces like a little plant. Like a pinto bean, you have to give it a trellis. Like it has to climb on something. But
Wow, beans. Okay.
yeah, like a really so I think yeah, one of the great things about gardening is it really teaches you to like pay attention to the cycles and like that's a really big part of it. Like no matter what you're growing,
Can you explain that, the cycles?
yeah, like I was talking about earlier that we're entering the cold season.
Hmm.
So there's a whole list of vegetables that are really easy to grow now, but like if you were trying to grow them in summertime, you would have a really hard time. And vice versa. Like
Hmm.
now is not the time to start tomatoes, for instance. But like tomatoes are pretty easy to grow if you start them in springtime.
Okay.
And yeah, I would say like I think a really undervalued asset for gardeners is just YouTube. Like I feel like in general for like a lot of like DIY stuff, YouTube has become a really wonderful tool for that. It's probably one of the best things about it is
YouTube University, as they say, right?
yeah. That's like probably like maybe 80% of what I learn is from YouTube. And still to this day, like I do like regular research where I'll just like look up a bunch of YouTube videos. Like I'll pick a subject and just watch a few different videos about it. So I think like that's a great way to start if you're interested. Just start like looking up stuff on YouTube, and eventually you'll find like a few creators that you really like enjoy.
Their approach. But
Yeah,
you would definitely say something easy to grow is radish, beans.
radish and beans. Like this time of year, like now it's getting cooler. Um, yeah, like lettuce is easy to grow. Cilantro, like
Okay.
that's probably like really easy to grow, and a lot of people like it. I personally, that's one of those where once I grew it myself, like you get like so much more complex flavors and aromas
From the
that the
cilantro?
yeah, so like the stuff at the store seems really bland in comparison now. So like it kind of like spoil you a little bit growing your own vegetables.
Makes sense. So what would be something easy to grow during the on the other cycle,
Yeah, so like once springtime starts,
which
that
is like
is a
March? Is that March, spring?
yeah, like March or April.
Okay.
Usually by March it's still getting kind of cold, but you can start some stuff. But yeah, tomatoes, especially cherry tomatoes. That's
Hmm.
like a plant that's very resilient. The one challenge with cherry tomatoes is that they grow a lot. So like the trellises that they sell, like tomato cages from the store, those are way too small for cherry tomatoes. So yeah, usually like you have to like kind of make your own trellis or something. But that's really the only challenge with tomatoes. And then yeah, potatoes are
Okay.
surprisingly easy.
Potatoes. How you say potatoes?
Potatoes,
Potatoes.
boil and mash them, stick them in
Nice.
a stew.
Yams count in that same category? Do yams count?
Yeah, that's another real easy one that like a good food producer. So usually like I'll start my yams or my sweet potatoes like in like June or July. Like it's already summer. And as I try to like time it so that they're pretty much done around Christmas. And up until that point though, I don't know if we've talked about this at Acoma. We're growing them there, and you get the leaves, like it sprawls out like a vine on the ground, and you can harvest those leaves pretty much like all year round. It's like a source of greens similar to spinach.
And you can eat them basically.
Yeah, and so the whole time you're growing it, you're getting that yield of like spinach like leaves, and then at the end you get the potatoes,
It's like a
and
win-win.
yeah, and like overall, yeah, you're getting a lot from it. And also, yeah, like easy things that'll feed you a lot are things like kale and collard greens. Like out here, like you can pretty much grow them. Like you can start a plant and have it live for several years and like grow it to be like a big bush. And you just always have like you'll always have some source of leafy greens if you're growing kale or collard greens.
Nice. Kevin, what it makes me think about is like when you're growing your own vegetables, you have to, or your own food, you have to kind of like think ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
So let's say for a family of four, how much would someone need to grow to like sustain them on their food? What would you say?
I mean that's a complicated one
It
because
is, huh?
yeah, there's like so many ways you can eat, and like it's good to kind of like look at like earlier, like the way that people lived, like maybe like 200 years ago, where
Hmm.
that was like much more common, where you were subsisting a good amount of what you could like grow in your yard, and like with that, like it was kind of like the where like the idea of like how collard greens are made,
Hmm.
where basically you start with just like a piece of smoked meat and you boil that, and you get some like flavored broth, and then like you have meat and broth, and then you just now usually only do like collard greens and like a few other vegetables, but really the idea would be to like put everything that you had, like whatever you had available coming out of your garden, would be going into that broth and just kind of all boiled together.
Yeah.
And so like if you were content with that, like you have that like over some, like rice or some type of grain, you're pretty much like covering all your bases.
Yeah.
But and like you could like technically survive off of that. So
It's a lot more difficult to do something, to be basically surviving only off of your own supply nowadays would be a
yeah.
lot more difficult to do.
Yeah, I find like that. Yeah, it was like always a big goal of mine, and I've gotten like decent at it. Like if I like that is mainly the issue. Like I'm not very creative when it comes to recipes, so I tend to get bored.
Oh, the same
But
thing?
yeah, so
Gotcha.
like in summertime, a lot of what I make revolves around having things like zucchini and eggplant. Like those are you get a lot of that in summertime. And usually most of the time it is just kind of like a follow those basic rules of like get some type of meat and like cook that up and then cook your vegetables behind it with like whatever vegetables you have.
Okay.
And then I would usually kind of make like a stir fry thing and like serve it over brown rice or mainly brown rice I eat. I'm trying to venture into other grains. That's like
Okay.
another
Like
aspect
quinoa?
of yeah, like quinoa or say amaranth.
Have you considered? Oh, I can't think of the one. It's a popular one. I think it's one of the most. I know they use it in Africa and India a lot, but it's like a huge grain they use a lot worldwide. I can't think. It'll come to me though. But I wanted to ask is what percentage of food that you eat is coming from you? Like 60%, 70%?
Um, varies a lot. I would probably say like maybe an overall about 30%. Like
Okay,
it
and then
all
the rest from
depends.
like the supermarket.
Yeah,
Okay,
the supermarket. Yeah,
well, it's better than 100%.
yeah. Like I will
Market.
do that. Like really, what the obstacle mainly is just the like the habits and the like getting bored. Like I'll usually eat like pretty simple, but eventually I get bored and just will like go for fast food or whatever. It's
Got you. Like, let me get a donut or something.
yeah. It's I guess like a lot of it's very stimulating food. It's pleasurable, but
Yeah,
like not very good for your guts or
got you.
whatever.
It's the guilty pleasure
Yeah.
from working so hard. And then basically it's the stuff that gets you off your antenna, and then you go back into your antenna later.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Basically. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like that's what like being able to maintain it is great. You're eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of fiber. It's kind of the way our bodies were designed. Like look at like indigenous people, like they eat like way more fibrous foods than we do. Like even the stuff that we grow ourselves, it's been selectively bred to like be tastier, and
Yes.
so tend to get away from like a lot of the wild foods. They're like more fibrous, just like less palatable.
Got you. Give us an example of a wild food.
Wild food, well, like it's actually kind of funny because tend to be the things that like gardeners disdain, like we call weeds,
Mm,
and they oftentimes are like edible or medicinal or both. Like dandelions are a great example.
they're really great things from dandelions.
Yeah.
Dandelion root. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a really great liver detox. Like you can use the roots to detoxify your liver, and it also kind of helps clean out your like bowels in general. 'Cause it and promotes the production of bile, which is kind of like important.
Yeah. Those are considered weeds. Dandelions are considered
Yeah.
weeds.
Oh yeah. And not everybody knows that they're edible. That's one of the more well-known ones. But there's also things like lamb's quarter, purslane, mallow, henbit. Like there's a lot of like the more you learn about weeds, it's kind of funny because they are like very good for us, but we don't like them. I guess like they grow better than the stuff that we want to grow,
Yeah.
and we want to grow that stuff because it tastes better. So like the weeds are less palatable, but they are like, if you look at the nutrition, they're often a lot more nutritious than the foods that we grow. And
Don't they
that's
also? Don't they? I'm sorry. Don't they also kill the plants that you're trying to grow as well?
yeah, because they outcompete them. You know, like our domesticated plants are kind of weak compared to like these are the ones like not only like are they not domesticated, but they are like whatever is popping up in that area is usually something that if you leave it, it's kind of like helping to repair the soil. And so like something like a dandelion, like you see them a lot in people's front yards, and it's actually like the act of mowing your lawn helps facilitate the growth of dandelions because they, like when you're mowing your lawn, you're compacting your soil. And with dandelions, they actually, like they germinate better in compacted soil. But when they grow, they have this fat taproot that, like over the natural span of its life, if it's just left there and it decays, then it has this like organic channel and it like naturally decompacts the soil. So it's almost like a the soil's natural solution for like soil compaction.
And
Yeah,
dandelions are the ones that you pick and you can blow, right? The little
yeah,
white balls and blow 'em.
yeah. The
And
wishes.
those are seeds, right? That are on top or no?
Yeah, those are seeds.
Wow. Um, Kevin, I want to play a quick game with you.
Okay.
All right. It's going to be called Quick Slip, and I want you to answer as fast as I'm going to give you a word, and I want you to answer as quick as you can what comes to mind, the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready for it?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Quick Slip. Here we go. Corn.
You say corn?
Corn.
Uh, bread.
Papaya.
I pussy.
Marijuana.
Pussy.
Aspirin.
Aspirin. I don't know. Headache.
Food desert.
Desert. Jack in the Box.
Peyote.
Good times.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. His name Jeffrey Epstein.
IBS.
IBS.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Irritable bowel syndrome. Ooh, that's a weird one. No fun.
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury. Don't stop me now.
Salmon.
Salmon. Bears.
OBGYN.
OBGYN. Vagina doctor.
Opioids.
Opioids. It's good and bad. Can be good, they can be bad.
And mushrooms.
Mushrooms, great natural medicine.
Love it. What's your thought on the term? We talked a little bit about native plants, but what's your thoughts on the term of cash crops?
Cash crops.
And what do you think those are?
I guess a crop that makes a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was a period of time where I was a weed grower.
Okay. Can you say that again?
I was a marijuana grower at a
Okay.
certain point, where like I grew it for profit, for money, and yeah, that always like at first, it just seemed like a magical thing. It is almost like a money tree because you're growing outdoors. Like I would grow plants that had multiple pounds on them, and you can easily sell a pound for like $1,000, and so it is like growing money. And but you really kind of start to see like all like perfect examples of just kind of like the ugliness that can come out of that because like cannabis is a plant and people kind of make of it whatever they will. Like I believe it can be a really great medicine. I think like in our modern society it can become a problem as well. I feel like it's like akin to it's like a psychedelic plant, and like similar to mushrooms, there are some like shamanic traditions around using it in that way. But I feel like yeah, like it's something that's just kind of like misunderstood in our culture, and for a lot of people, I think it hurts them more than it helps them. But like in the other side, like with the cash crop thing, like because it's so valuable, because we put so much value on it, like you get certain like side effects of like violence, like people who are willing to like kill other people over it, or getting robbed and shit like that. Like it's just all this kind of ugliness comes out of placing that much value on it. But like, yeah, from my opinion though, like it is a plant. Like I loved growing it. I'd love to get back to it someday, like just to grow it for my own enjoyment, because it's a beautiful plant. It's
It is a
really
beautiful
cool.
plant.
Yeah, smells really good. It's yeah, it looks really crazy. It's like one of those weird things that like so you can trip out on. There's like the strange pattern to cannabis because like you ever seen trichomes under a microscope?
No.
So like the trichomes, it's
I'm
like
thinking of pine cones. I don't know why I'm thinking pine
uh
cones when you say tricones.
so the trichome is basically like what you see as like the frost on a really good bud, like when it's frosty.
Okay, okay.
What those are, like those are basically tiny glands that are producing the cannabinoids. And when you look at them really close, they basically look like mushrooms. Like they're like little see-through mushrooms. And it's interesting because like a mushroom is kind of like a phallus, and
Okay,
then
okay.
those are growing on what is the female reproductive organ of the cannabis plant. Like you have like these little tiny, like the hairs, like those red hairs. Those are the dried up pistils of the female cannabis plant, which is essentially the plant's vagina.
Okay.
And then those are form what you get from buds that broke down. Those come from what are called colas, which is like a really big shaft of weed, basically, that looks like a giant dick. So it's like a weird, like in and out thing of a female and male representation, kind of continues to go on and on.
Throughout the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were growing, would you say there was definitely some spiritual aspects to it when you were growing it? 'Cause I feel like
Yeah.
I think you were getting upon it. Like, I think we do abuse the plant now. It's being
Yeah.
highly abused.
Yeah. So for me, like that started like psychedelics in general. Like when I was young and first like using them, I became aware of like the positive sides of like the like how they can kind of like help you be like more spiritual or be able to see that aspect of life. But I feel like yeah, like when you look at the cultures where those came from, like our culture doesn't really have a lot of experience with say like something like mushrooms, like psychedelic mushrooms, um, in like Christian Western culture. Psychedelics in general have been kind of like a taboo thing for like over a millennia,
Hmm.
and it kind of got pushed out of the culture way early on. And kind of like really like the closest thing was like alcohol. It was like the one like mind altering thing that was socially acceptable. And so when we
Except
came
during,
across,
I'm sorry, except like during the '60s when they had like that big.
yeah.
Okay.
Or so that's like really because the or psilocybin mushrooms were discovered in the 50s.
Okay.
And then you have like what's his name, Hoffman, the guy who invented LSD. I think it
Hmm.
was like the 30s or something. And so up until that point, like really like psychedelics had no place in Western cultures. And then they showed up, and it was like the powers that be just kind of freaked out and like made it all super illegal. And as I think like the biggest issue with our culture in regards to that is that like we don't really have a good reference with how to utilize. It's like a super powerful, super useful tool that we like don't really understand how to use. And so it does, like when I was young I wasn't aware of it. Only like as I got older and like started like starting to go to like raves and stuff, I started to see like people using those things in a way that I thought was like not good. Like they're not helping themselves. They're
That
just
part. Yeah,
yeah,
that's definitely a good place to notice where the drug is not being used properly.
yeah,
Basically out of nature. It's not being part of, it's not
yeah,
working with it in nature with it properly.
yeah, and also like yeah, like you can use it with the intention of like connecting to something mystical. Or I think if it is just for like self-indulgence, then that's no good. And it is kind of like playing with something that we don't understand because it's kind of like opens up these doors, gives you access to something that we otherwise don't. And I think like a lot of people, like they're young and naive or they don't really know anything about that, and all of a sudden they're like opening themselves to these mysterious forces. And yeah, I don't know, like I do think as far as like for psychological healing and stuff, like they're really amazing, but like you do need some type of guidance. Or for me, like I feel like I just maybe got lucky, but it was also yeah, like certain things that like dark sides of it that I just wasn't aware of when I was younger. But ultimately it did like play that essential role that it helped me a lot, like be a more positive person and like see the love in the world.
And that's also related to like the marijuana and working with and growing marijuana.
Yeah. That too, like when I first started growing it, it really was just because I really loved weed, and
Yeah. Yeah. Who doesn't?
yeah, and that
Or who
too, like
hasn't?
I didn't really fully understand that it was even a problem until I was like in my late 20s, like I was like almost 30, and smoked weed or ingested weed all the time, and it was yeah, only at that point I started realizing like maybe I shouldn't like be doing this all the time, and that like yeah, kind of like was harmlessly or thinking of it as harmless and just kind of like forming this unhealthy relationship to it, which is like essentially an addiction. Yeah.
When you mentioned like the guidance of it, I was talking to a friend of mine. Shout out to you, Della, and he did the experiment. The not the experiment I want to say, but the experience that a lot of people are doing right now, and I can't think of the term, but they go. It's really big in South America,
Mm.
and you know
The ayahuasca.
ayahuasca.
Oh, yeah.
And he did the ayahuasca with the people that guide him and stuff like that, and take him to that training. And he did it for like 3 days, and it just reminded me of that story about him telling me about how like you need some people around you to kind of help guide you like through the process of what's happening to you, or be there around you to
Yeah.
kind of just made me think about that, about the guidance needed.
Yeah. I mean, that's the sad thing is like a lot of those cultures where they came from, they had experience with those psychedelics for thousands of years and kind of like were able to learn lessons and essentially like a lot of their what they would call shamans were almost like in charge of this institution based around how to take these what would be considered the right way to take them.
Yeah,
And yeah, I guess that's really one of the shames is like we have this tool like it is like this psychological medicine that we really need like as a people. There's like that obvious need to cultivate a better healthier relationship with our own selves. And like at that time that yeah, like this medicine is needed more than ever. Don't really know how to use it properly, and it is just kind of like inevitably ending up in a situation where like some people just have to be pioneers about it and try to figure it out, and some people you end up like smashing up against the rocks. You have like people who lose their minds.
that part. It reminds
Yeah,
me of shout out to you, Flex, from the plug. He was talking about like the reason why he never did any hard drugs is because a lot of the times you can do a hard drug just once and lose
yeah,
your mind forever.
yeah. And that's a hard thing to know because I guess they understand it better now that you could have like a predisposition towards like schizophrenia, and like it could just be like one good psychedelic use can like
Open that
unlock it.
gate. Yeah.
then you're just there forever. And I know, like, personally, probably like the people that ended up like the most messed up are usually messing around with LSD. And, so I mean, personally, I'm a much bigger believer in like the natural ones, like mescaline from cacti, it's like San Pedro cactus and peyote, like they're mescaline, and then yeah, the mushrooms. And but it's still like it is like risky. It's like a type of almost like venturing. Like I always love the idea, like this word psychonaut. It's like a explorer of the psyche. But like it is that you are kind of like venturing into the wilderness of your psyche in a way. And
What is it called?
psychonaut.
Psychonaut?
Yeah, like an astronaut, but psyche.
Oh, okay. Psychonaut. Okay. Exploring of the psyche. Yeah, which can, you can end in places where you may not ever come back, right? You can get
Yeah,
lost, right?
I think there's some inherent danger, but it is like I believe that like humans and psychedelics, like we have a symbiotic relationship with them because like our psyche is such a powerful thing. Like so
Mm-hmm.
much of what we are comes from our consciousness.
100%.
And so it's like it can become like it can be a great asset, but it can also harm us, you know, like so many people sort of like have suffering in their life that's self-inflicted, or it's created by a perception. There's like a paradigm that they exist in, and because our minds are so powerful, it's like real, you know, like they you can have like hold like self-defeating beliefs, and like it really harms you in your life,
Yeah.
but ultimately it is just something that exists in your mind. And that is where like psychedelics are great for that, because they kind of like help you step outside of that a little bit and can help you see that it is just a paradigm that you're creating, or you know, just something that's existing in your mind.
Got you. Or the opposite, right? It can make you just go deeper into that belief. It can probably go the opposite
That
way
could
too.
happen, yeah. 'Cause I mean, I don't think they're for everybody. Like you probably want to start with a like a willingness to explore yourself,
Yeah.
because as like you know, like what people call like bad trips. That's
There it is.
usually like you come across something that's very unpleasant. It can oftentimes be like unresolved trauma and things like that. But it's like ultimately a great way to heal. But like that first step of it, like being brought into the forefront of your consciousness, can often be really difficult. And it can
Definitely.
be terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's yeah.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
Like with psychedelics, like I think that can teach you that like that is almost like the greatest and most frightening thing that is in your life is within you. Like that's all, you know, like psychedelics, it can sound kind of trivial to say like, you know, like the worst, the most terrifying thing, whatever it is that happens within that experience, it's all inside of you. You know, it's all just things within yourself. But, you know, that can be very profound.
Yeah. Super is profound in itself. That's a gem.
Mm.
I totally forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, that's oh yeah. And I think going back to like having like a teacher or a guide makes me think of Obi-Wan Kenobi for some reason. I'm not that big of a fan of Star Wars, but it makes me think like if I'm gonna be sailing the ocean, would I rather go with someone who's sailed before, or do I want to figure out on my own?
Right, yeah.
And it's kind of like, yeah, I would definitely want to go with someone who knows the ocean, and they can just kind of like, hey man, like watch out for that rock. I'm gonna let you figure like it's your journey, but hey,
Right.
look out for this. This is fine. Like it
Yeah.
makes more sense. As opposed to like, hey, you're gonna figure out the hard way, and the hard way might not be the
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good metaphor. And it is also like in the same way, people like just not knowing, you know, sort of like dive into the deep end. Like it's almost like if you've never sailed before and like you try to go out into the ocean, like that's like gonna be very dangerous.
yeah, and you don't even know how to swim.
Yeah.
You don't even know how to swim.
Good to start small.
Kevin, I want to thank you so much for talking with us and sharing your story with us. I think you've mentioned this before, but I'm going to ask again. Um, how has being a part of this farming world changed your life?
Um, really, I mean, at a certain point, it's kind of been this way for a while. Like, it's a very central part of my life. It's I was talking about it like being like a spiritual practice, and to me, like that's very important. I feel like I've been doing it for like 13 years now, and like every time I'm out there, like it's still teaching me,
Hmm.
and yeah, like all those lessons get applied to life as well. Like it's all patterns. So the lessons you can learn from a garden, you can apply them to life, and yeah, I don't know. Like to me, it seems like almost like having like a good exercise regimen, or like having positive people in your life. It's just like part of having like a healthy, balanced life.
Healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's yeah. Like even knowing how to have healthy relationships, I feel like gardening has helped me understand that a lot. Like it teaches you how to nurture things, and like the importance of like being open minded and also like being consistent. Yeah, a lot of like the difference between like a good gardener and a bad gardener is how consistent you can be.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So someone that shows up every day, as though someone's like,
Yeah.
maybe next week.
Right. Yeah. And similar, yeah, like with people, if you want a good relationship with a person, then like you have to kind of be observant of them, and like with a garden, it is like not only being there to take care of its needs, but being able to notice when its needs do arise.
Give us some examples of when a garden needs tending to, or like when it's asking for help.
Yeah. So like yeah, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, and what's amazing is that there's like so many things that can go wrong.
Wow.
That like every year there's like something new, something that
But
I'd,
withered
I'd never
leaves.
experienced before. Yeah, like
When leaves are withering.
yeah, like you can see as like yeah, just after you've grown a plant for a while, you start to become familiar with like what a good healthy plant looks like and what an unhealthy plant looks like. Like a couple years ago, it was like kind of devastating when it happened. I was growing this tomato variety called Cherokee Purple. It is one of my favorite tomatoes. It's a really big tomato. It's just like very what they call like beefsteak varieties.
Yes.
They're like very thick, just like a giant good tasting tomato.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out that year that that particular variety is favored by this certain pest. I forget what the name of this bug is, but it like basically the bug will like bite the plant and like feed off of it, and when it does that, it passes on a virus that's fatal to the tomato.
Completely. Wow.
Yeah, and the way you tell is basically all the leaves start to curl up, like as if it's dehydrated, and
There's no saving it from that.
yeah, basically what happens. So that one like I planted like 9 of them, and 7 of the 9 ended up getting this leaf curl disease.
Phoebe couldn't save her.
No, that's that one particular. I mean, it could sometime. Like I think at that time I didn't really have as many Phoebes in my garden, so maybe just need more Phoebes.
Yeah. Dang, Phoebe. Um, speaking of pests, yeah, I think we were talking a while back. I think last year sometime, there was like this government thing that was happening because like there was going to be like this national wide pest
Or
that was going to, you know what I'm
talking about
talking
the
about?
quarantine that happened earlier this year.
Yeah, I was earlier this year. Can
Yeah,
you speak about that and like what that is and like does it happen often and can
yeah.
you explain a little bit more about that?
So I think like the quarantines. I guess that's more like something I'm like more recently aware of. It's hard to know. Like I've heard of ones happening before, but I think it's something you don't really hear about unless you're like in the agricultural world in
Hmm.
some way. And so I guess it's one of the tough things about globalization. Like we have like the whole world is kind of connected, and so very easy to have things kind of come in that sort of like disrupt your ecosystem if left unchecked. And so the one earlier this year was the Oriental fruit fly, and it, from my understanding, came through citrus shipments that came out of Indonesia. It basically was just like um, this like pest. It was infected with the pest. They brought it over here, and then it gets wild, like goes out and starts spreading. And it was extra terrifying to like the agricultural industry because it targeted something like 200 different crops were
Wow.
affected by it. And like they mostly go after the fruit. Like unlike, we have fruit flies. Like there's always been fruit flies with fruit, but they don't really do a whole lot of noticeable damage. You can actually see them if you know what you're looking at, because it just would be like a little tiny divot on the fruit. And but with the Oriental fruit fly, they actually will like turn the entire like fruit into just pulp. Like they actually like destroy a lot of the fruit. So yeah, it would affect. So like there's that, like with globalization, I heard there's like on average about like 10 different pests that like kind of show up in California every year, like on average. So something that happens on a regular basis.
And
And
like, as far as California, does like the government help protect?
mhm.
What do they do?
So that's like actually got to hear a talk from an entomologist who like worked with California's government and helps like find solutions to these invasive pests.
Okay.
And so like one of the big ones before the Oriental fruit fly was called a citrus psyllid, and it's a
It's like a worm.
yeah, well, it's actually it's this weird kind of bug called a scale, and it's just sort of like this. I don't know, almost looks like a barnacle or something that's just like stuck to the plant, and
Okay.
it feeds off of the plant, and then usually they produce this like sugary excrement that ants love to harvest, and yeah, weird old ants. But yeah, like it was a really cool talk because he was talking about how the way they were able to find a solution to this citrus psyllid was actually a parasitic wasp that like specifically lays its eggs in the citrus psyllid.
Ah, and kills it from within.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then like a crazy little caveat with that was that because the ants like to harvest their excrement, the ants will actually protect them. And so in order to actually solve the problem, they also had to figure out a way to like keep the ants off of the plants. Because it was like they released this parasitic wasp and it was going out and laying its eggs in the psyllids. But if the ants were present, then the ant would like fend off the wasp.
Mm,
So like they found a way to keep the
the ants at bay.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
And does the government give like any like type of subsidy to protect farmers from maybe losing their crops during this time?
yeah, I'm not sure about that. I was
Okay.
wondering a lot because with the last quarantine, like that, I would imagine would like affect a lot of people's
Yield.
like if they're growing for profit. Like
Yeah.
luckily the gardens where I was doing it like were nonprofits, but it was still like difficult to be growing like all this stuff that we like had to take precautions with. Like we couldn't just give away like all of the fruit that we had, like all of our peaches and nectarines and stuff.
Hmm.
Like we had to process them on site. Like we couldn't just take them off site
Okay.
out of fear of spreading the
The
psyllid or
that makes
the Oriental fruit fly.
that makes sense. I had this vision for this area for a long time, which is turning because there's a lot of empty lots out here, empty places.
Yeah.
And I had a vision, and I even shared this with our current mayor, Helen Tran. And I had this very almost 10 years now, which is turning those spots into green spaces by turning them into greenhouses and
Mhm.
making them EBT friendly
Yeah, that'd be great.
and having um, kids work there as well, and they can leave with free food. So not only is it for the community, it makes a green space. It allows people who have EBT to buy food there, and also teaches the community how to grow as well. And it turns these ugly spaces. So
Yeah.
Maybe one day it'll come true. Maybe we'll put our own paper together and build that ourselves or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's doable. Yeah, for a while, um, yeah, because like after 2008, as maybe like when I really started to notice like how many of those plots we had, just how many just like empty, yeah. And heard from someone, it was a while back, but there might be some way to actually like if those things have been like dormant for a certain amount of time, like you can get like a lease, like not you don't have to pay for it, but like you can basically get like the the county or whatever to like give you permission to actually like grow on them.
Great. Like I said, I had this vision a long time ago, and I shared it with Helen Tran, and this is when she was running, and she said, "Yeah, let's do it." Um, I guess I got to get back to you, Miss Helen Tran, and maybe we can get that done. That'd be amazing for our city,
It would be
city of San Bernardino. Kevin, we learned a lot about what you do and who you are today, and thank you again for sharing with us. But what's something that most people don't know about you, even close friends? And it could be anything. We know that you like theater and write and stuff like
yeah.
that. But what's something that most people don't even know about you? It could be anything.
Well, I think yeah. Well, I do make music. Like I'm like performing at this time, but like I have music out there that I made and used to perform and plan on getting back to it.
Okay, under the name Kevin Head?
No.
What was it under the name of?
I haven't. I have to think of something else. I never really had a name. No.
Okay. So how would they address you? Like, coming to the stage.
This guy.
This guy, man in overalls.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of know you do music. So what else
Oh, do you
besides
do
music?
that?
Yeah,
Dang.
something else. Maybe like you like to paint your toenails. I don't know. It could be anything.
How did you know?
I know, right? I saw the pink on your shoes.
I'm a Puritan at the Renaissance Fair.
What is that?
So it's basically I play a fictional religious bigot at the Ren Fair.
Okay, every year?
Yeah, every year.
Okay, same character?
I was gone for a while, but yeah, the same character. When you go, like you join a guild, and they gave me a name. My Puritan name is Azariah Leek, and it's basically one character. It's always been the same character.
Okay. Can we get a little taste of the character, what he does and how he talks? Can we get a little taste?
Oh, geez. Yeah, so I think we're supposed to talk in the specific like accent.
Of
It's, like,
course.
appropriate for that time.
Yeah, give us a taste. Give us a taste, Kev.
Let's see. So the usually like the go-to is to do the Lord's Prayer. Like,
Okay.
the
Wait,
Lord
what's
is
the character's name again?
Azariah.
Azariah. Okay, so
Leek.
I'm gonna have a so Mr. Azariah, how has your crops turned out this year, Azariah?
They've turned out terrible this time of year. Not my fault though. I believe that I did upset a witch. That's
How many witches have you seen this year, Azariah?
more I could possibly count.
Gotcha. And how can you tell between a witch and a normal woman?
Well, there's three questions you can ask them, and basically, the whole point is to trick them into giving up information that they could only have if they were a witch.
What are those three questions that you would ask?
Well, first we ask if what's my favorite color. If they know my favorite color, then clearly they must have some sort of sacred power or special power. I think I forgot. That's the best that I can do.
Awesome. Super awesome. I always want to say Hezekiah, but it's not Hezekiah. I don't know why I want to call you Hezekiah. I was going to ask you about your wife and your kids, but that's fine. Thank you so much, Kevin, Mr. Head.
Thank you for
Kevin
having
Head.
me.
What current projects are you working on, whether it has to do with working in the community, farming, your artistic side? What current projects are you working on?
So yeah, it is mainly just working on the gardens. So I work with two gardens right now. I'm actually employed by. That's the Acoma Community Garden at the Acoma Unity Center, and then the Garden of Health, which is just straight a community garden that's on 3rd and Tippecanoe. And those, yeah, just like expanding the production areas. And at Acoma, we're finally at the point where we can start to develop kind of more of the stuff that surrounds the production area, which would be like tree guilds and like hedges, like perennial bushes and things like that. Kind of help the thing have more of a like an ecosystem.
And can anyone come to these community gardens and get food from them?
I guess it depends.
Depends.
Yeah, if we have food to give away, then yeah, I happily give it
Gotcha.
away.
If there's food, they can come and get it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Kevin, let's say 100 years pass by, 200 years pass by, and you're back with Jebediah. What would you like your empire to look like when people look back at here regarding, farming, family, culture, food, nature?
Hmm.
What would you like people to look back at your empire 250 years from now?
Dang, that's a lot. I mean, for me, I guess, like, if I'm like gonna like pass on any sort of message, I think it's important to try to not be like egocentric about our existence. And I think that's kind of like a plight of modern living. Like we're so detached from the natural cycles that we can easily fall under the illusion that like we are separate from the world around us. And so, like I said, I try to like cultivate that like understanding of the interconnectedness that exists between us and nature. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I would kind of prefer to not be remembered, hopefully forgotten, but maybe the message would still be alive. So that's what I mean. I hope, whatever work I do, that it inspires people to like want to participate in that.
Okay. Well, we definitely want to remember where the message comes from. We just don't want to have it. We don't want someone taking the credit for your message. And right? Nah, F that. Forget that. Forget that. Like Columbus discovered America. Fuck that. No. Give the credit to the man who said it, right? But I do love that empire, which is don't be egocentric and stuff like that. I like that empire. It's beautiful, and I want to thank you again, Kevin, so much. Can you please let everybody know how they can find you, reach you, support you, maybe get in contact with you? Let everybody know.
Yeah, I am on Instagram. I think it's just Kevin Head with like a bunch of numbers after it.
Do you know the numbers?
No.
Oh, snap. We'll have the link in the description for people like that.
All right, awesome.
Gotcha. No website, no nothing like that?
No, I don't have a website. And I have just Acoma Unity Center and the Garden of Health. Usually there.
So people can reach it through Instagram though, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll definitely link that in the description. Is there anything else you want to say before you get out of here?
Just thanks for doing this with me. This was fun.
Thank you for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you guys all for listening, tuning in, watching, and staying with us. This is The Empire. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. My name is Antonio D. Miles. Yes, I am the host. If you want to support, if you like the work that we're doing, we have CASHAPP, which is $THEE Empire Podcast. We also have PayPal and other things in the description. We also have my book, which is 10 Things Your Parents Should Have Taught You But Didn't. That's in the description. You guys can all click on those things in the description box. Description. Wait, what did he say? Description. But other than that, you guys, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. All right? Peace.